Hello everyone, we're back again to Joy's class. So today I'm going to take you on quadratic equation using completing the square method. In my last video, I tweeted about quadratic equation using factorization method. So in this video, I'm going to talk about completing the square method using quadratic equation using completing the square method. Okay, now before we go into examples, I want to tell you some tips or steps in solving the equation. Example, if you're given something like this, a squared plus ba plus c equal to 0. Remember, this is a typical example of a quadratic equation. I told you in my last video that you can solve it using 4 types: factorization method, completing the square method, formula method, and graphical method. Okay, in my last video I talked about factorization method. Now in this video I'm going to talk about completing the square method. Okay, now when you're given something like this, the first thing to do is to take the variables on one side and the constant on the other side, which means as squared and ba should be on the left hand side and the constant c should be on the right hand side. This will give you something like this: as squared plus ba equal to minus c. You also be careful with your signs. Okay, now the next thing to do is to make sure that the s squared or the a squared are in unity. Okay, that the number is in unity, but since it is, if there is a coefficient here, you have to divide through by that coefficient. Okay, now the next thing you also do is to get the half of this of the coefficient of a, get the half of the coefficient of a and square it. Then you add it to both sides. Simply put, add the square of the half of the coefficient of a on both sides, which is as squared plus ba plus b over 2 all squared. Okay, then you're adding it to both sides, plus b over 2 all squared. Okay, now the next thing to do is to make it in the form of, make this equation in the form of a plus b all squared, which means you get the squares, get them together and put it in one bracket, which is a plus b over 2 all squared equal to minus c plus b over 2 all squared. Okay, when you've done this, then the next thing to do is to remove this square. And just like when you have when you want to remove a square, what you do is to get the square root of that square. For example, if I have 2 square, I want to remove the square, I get the square root of 2 square. Okay, I still want to get this 2, I have to get the square root of 2 square. For example, let's just solve it through. For 2 square will give you 4, square root of 4 will give you 2. So if you want to get a, or want this numbers to be on their own, we have to get the square root of both sides. Okay, remember, whatever you do in the left hand side, you also do it in the right hand side. So we will now square the equations. You get the square root of the equations. Then when you get the square root of the equations, remember this is plus or minus. Of course, the square root will cancel this, giving you a plus b over 2 equal to plus or minus wherever is inside. Then you solve through. I know it might be a bit confusing, but when I take 1 or 2 examples, we might try to know it better. Okay, let's forget about this and pick out an example. Okay, in your example, when we have something like this: s squared minus 6x plus 7 equal to 0. This is our first example. S squared minus 6x plus 7 equal equal to 0. Remember the rule? The first thing is to arrange this equation. So we arrange the equation Now to arrange the equation, this will be x squared minus 6x equal to, this is positive 7, crossing this equality sign, it changes to negative 7. Okay, now the next thing to check is if this x squared is in unity. Okay, of course there is 1 here, and you don't need to divide all through by any coefficients, because even if you divide through by 1, you still get back your equation. So we'll move to this next step, which is getting the half of this and square. Okay, which is x squared minus 6x, half of this minus 6 over 2. Okay, when you get a half of this, it will be minus 3. Then remember, we are going to square it, so it will be minus plus minus 3 all squared is equal to minus 7 plus minus 3 all squared. Okay, so the next thing to do is to get the squares, which is x minus 3 all squared equal to minus 7 plus minus 3 times minus 3. When you have to open this, minus 3 times minus 3 will give you plus 9. Okay, minus times minus will give you plus, 3 times 3 will give you 9, plus 9. Okay, then this is x minus 3 all squared equal to minus 7 plus 9 give you plus 2. Okay, now the next thing to do is to get the square root of both sides. Now get the square root, find the square root of both sides. Square roots of both sides. Getting the square root of both sides, this would be square root of x over 3 all squared equal to the square root of plus or minus 2. Remember, I said the square root, of course, is going to cancel this square. So we are now left with x minus 3 equal to plus or minus square root of 2. Now the square root of 2 should give you plus or minus, this is x minus 3, give you plus or minus 1.41 something. So approximately in 2 decimal places 1.41. Okay, so now we now have to solve through. This is x minus 3. We now have to get x. Now to get x, we'll make x the subject of formula by taking this minus 3 crossing this equality sign, change it to plus 3. So this will be x equal to 3 plus or minus 1.41. So you're actually saying that x is equal to 3 plus 1.41, or x equal to 3 minus 1.41. Okay, 3 plus 1.41 will give you 4.41. Okay, then what we'll do, 3.00 minus 1.41. Okay, this is 299. This minus this will give you 5.1. So our x equal to 1.59. So we have gotten our answer as x equal to 4.41 or x equal to 1.59.